All right, everybody. Right here, we're looking at the client brief, and I did add a section, so make sure you download this. The newest updated version, at least just to copy this little section right here, and then you could paste it into your own client brief version if you're working on, a similar project. So this is the logo that we'll be using, and we'll get to this in a second because in this video, we're going to actually start getting the design ready on desktop. And we're going to work on putting the logo and creating the navigation, also creating the first part of our design system where we deal with colors and such. So let's get started. First thing over pages, we're going to click plus to add a new page. We're just going to put like a page. It's going to be blank, but it's going to be kind of like a category section for the page listing over here. So I'm going to put design system. Hit enter, and I'm just going to left click and drag it underneath. And our intention isn't to put anything inside of here. Again, it's just kind of for a label. And then all of our different not variations, but our different components and pages that make up our design system will be underneath this section. So for now, I know we're going to have a color page, and I'm just going to leave that blank as well. So we're also going to click another one, and we're going to specify desktop design. All right, so now we can kind of push this up right here and above the design system section, and let's get started. So this is the exciting stuff. We have our wireframe, and if we look up here, we know we're gonna have our logo and we're going to have our navigation. So for desktop design, let's go ahead, go to the frame tool and choose desktop 1440 by 1040. All right, so I'm just gonna drag this up a little bit. Eventually, we're gonna be dragging it way down. Actually, let's just do that now because I know this is gonna be, a little bit more of a lengthy page. Okay, so the very first consideration that I take into account is going to be the background color. So that's the very first consideration usually that I'm thinking about when we're trying to work with a high fidelity mockup. So that really means color. That's the first thing we're trying to think about. So what we're going to do is I do have a primary color in mind. And then from there, like we did previously, we can create different variations of it based on the lightness and darkness of that same hue. All right, so the color that I am going to work with is, I'm actually just gonna kind of copy a little snippet of the color off screen and then paste it here. All right, so this is the color that I want to use as the primary color. So like our call to actions and any other elements we want to kind of really stick out well is gonna be designated in this color right here. All right, so what we can do is let's go ahead and we'll just take our background and under fill, we'll get this color right here. Now we can just delete this. Now, of course, I don't want the background to be this exact color, but at least it gives us an opportunity here now under styles to add a new style, and we're gonna call this here our primary color. Great. Now, we don't wanna use primary color for this, so what we'll do here is we'll detach the style, and now we can choose, make sure you have HSL, hue, saturation, and lightness specified, and now we can try to create the background color. So for this design, we're gonna go dark. So it's gonna by default be dark mode. We don't have to have a toggle to allow it to transition to a light mode. Just keep in mind that you don't have to do that necessarily. So we're not going to do that. It's just gonna be dark mode by default. And let's go ahead and take the lightness down a lot. All right, so for this background, immediately I'm gonna make it light because we're already dealing with a dark background. So just like kind of a gray up here, a very light gray. Let's go back here and keep on adjusting this. Now I'm also gonna take down the saturation. So that means this is gonna slide way over here and we're gonna end up with a color that is very desaturated, almost devoid of color. And this is the area that I like a lot. So hue is 273, the saturation is 10, and the lightness is 14, if you wanna follow along exactly. So now that we have that, we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna add this to our styles. And so we'll hit create style. Now I think I'm gonna rename the other one from primary dash color to primary from primary color like this. We'll do that in a second. So let's just name this primary color, and then the value here is going to be based on the value that it was for the lightness value, which unfortunately I forget. It's at 14. Let's just make that 15. All right, so now we'll go ahead, we'll go over here and we'll create the style, primary color 15. All right, that looks pretty good. And again, if we want to make changes, we can. And what we can also do, we can edit this primary color by default. There we go. Okay, great. Now, do I like this exactly? I think it might have, I might want to change this real quick to -10 for the actual property. So if we come back over here, not -10, but 10 rather for the darkness. I kind of like that a little bit better right there. Okay, we're gonna stick with that. So again, change that to 10. So now we'll go to our colors. We can create a frame. And by the way, you don't necessarily have to create a frame to house these. You can just put them right on here as well. It's up to you. So let's go ahead and take just a rectangle here, and we're going to come over here. This is going to be our primary, and we'll go ahead and put in primary color rather. All right, that's good. We'll duplicate that. In fact, let's just duplicate both of them. So once we get all of this design system stuff established, we'll be able to design quicker, but now there's a lot of setup work. Let's also change this here. Primary color -10. There we go. As you can see, quite a stark contrast, but it does have a little bit of this hue in it. Great. So for now, we're just going to leave this as is. We'll expand on this further going on. So let's go back to our desktop design. We know the desktop, we're just going to change this to home, is primary color 10. And now we're going to go ahead and grab our logo. So whenever you're dealing with a client, you want to make sure as much as possible that their logo is provided in vector format. In this case, it is. All right, so desktop here, let us go ahead and change this to white. All right. So now let's take our home. We're going to add a layout grid, and we'll go ahead and change this to columns, change this to 12, change this to 120, and change the color to white. Great. Okay, so let's get this into place. 169 by 41 is roughly where I'm going to go with that. And then let's go ahead and get started on navigation. So again, going back to the client brief, the pages here are denoted as ad types. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, but also the home page will be 5. So we're going to put in real quick. We come over here to our desktop. All right, so now we're going to have the consideration of topography. So when we're talking about a design system, what are we going to be using? Now, one of the things you can do is ask the client if they know what font like their logo is in. Do you always have to use the same font as the logo? No, but it's certainly an option. We're going to assume that this client knows, and it's a font called Aileron or something like that. I'm not really sure how to pronounce it. It's A-E-I-L-O-R-N, I think. Well, let's just go type over here. A-E-I-L-E-R-O-N. Okay, so that's a typeface that you can download, by the way, if you want to try to follow along with the same thing. So what we'll do is we're going to name the first part of our navigation home. All right, and you can see it's currently size 19. For our size, we're going to make that 20 even, and also for now just regular. All right, that looks good. And again, we want to make sure we're using our rulers here. So Shift R, you could drag down a actual ruler here. It looks like this is centered up, and that's kind of what I want it to be. All right, that looks pretty good right there. Let's hit Shift R. And now, because we're gonna have multiple links and we want to be able to style them easily, we're gonna make this one a component here. So create component. And now we'll go ahead and also remember, we want to create component variants based on if there's going to be a hover state, also a currently active state. So we should go ahead and do that right now. So we'll go ahead and add our variants. And this whole section, we are now going to go ahead and delete. We're going to come over to our design system part, and we're going to create a new page called components. All right, and let's create a frame here, and we'll give it the background the same color as our document background. Let's make this a little light, by the way. All right, and let's go ahead and paste that in. Okay, and for the hover state, this is something that we can experiment with in our actual desktop design. So if I come back here to our components, let's see if we can copy that and simply paste it in. And we go ahead and change the color. And by the way, we'll hit Control-Shift-4 to get rid of the guides. And what we'll do is change this color here. Of course, we'll double click into it to select the type. And what I'll do is grab the background color, and we'll see about maybe giving it a little bit of we still want it to be light. We don't want to come down here because you lack the contrast. We'll come up here just so we can see a little bit of color right around there. So that's going to be 276, 53, and 53. All right, so now what we can do is we can add to our fill, and we'll add a plus here, and we're going to specify text, and we'll say hover. Great. Now we can go ahead simply and delete that, go back to our components, and for this one, we'll specify hover, or let's just change this to true. Property 1, we can come over here and select it, and then change property 1 to hover. There we go. And then this one will change to false. All right. And for hover, it simply means we double click into the text and we change, or we grab this color right here. So that will be our hover color. And we'll go back to prototype, double click here, drag a connection while hovering, and there we go. We can make it instant, or we can make it smart animate. Let's just make it instant because that's typically how it would be integrated in the front end with CSS. Great. So let's do another variation as well while we're here. This one, we'll go ahead and duplicate that, and let's go back to design. This is going to be false, and we're going to change, we're going to add a new property, and this will be, let's see, we'll make this active, and that can be true or false as well. So we can select both of these. We'll select this one finally. We take off hover. So one thing right here, we'll double click and change this. And right now we didn't create an actual color for just the white text, which is fine. What we can do is just detach this instance, make it white. And then we can also change this area and make this bold as well. All right, so active is going to be true. And there we go. So now we have our 3 different states. What we can do is we can move these down because this is, contained within our design system. And we can add our own label here. Default. Let's just change this to something pretty small like 14. Make this regular. And lettuce. I'm trying to think about how I want to style this. I did not create this beforehand, so I'm kind of making decisions on the fly here. This will be default. We'll duplicate this. This will be hover. This will be active. There we go. All right, sorry for all the setup work, very necessary though. Let's continue on. So now we can go back to our desktop design and we can go to our assets, and under frame 1, we can drag, let's go back here, it selected that by accident. So assets, we can drag this home right there. Okay. Come up here and duplicate this. Push it over just a bit, and we're going to type this add types. All right, right there. And what we can do now is select both of those, and we can add an auto layout, and then we can go ahead and duplicate this. That gives us our equal spacing, and then this one will be contact. All right. So let's get this situated over here. Now what we can do is we can take our home and specify active. Great. So now if we hit play and we hover over, there we go. Now another thing that you can choose to do is you can also make an active state or a hover state of the active button as well. So let's go ahead and do that real quickly. So we'll go over to our component and we'll duplicate this one, duplicate that as well. Active space hover. All right, and oh, I just realized something. I don't think we needed to do that. In fact, we could just, yeah, we did need to do that. I'm sorry, I'm thinking ahead. All right, so what we can do now is create a true right there for hover, and then we can double click this and grab our hover style, go back to our prototyping, and then when this one's hovered over, it's going to change to this one right here. So now let's see if that worked, which it's not, and that's because we need to change this to while hovering. All right, there we go. Exactly what we wanted. Okay, so we have home, add types, and contact. Now, what I'm deciding to do is we still have these other pages, the start a campaign form and login form. So we have the contact, add types, and home in the primary navigation where we just have 3 of them, and it's going to be a centered navigation. But then off to the right, we're going to have a link to starting a campaign form and also the login form as well. So login and register, they kind of go hand in hand. That's why we're grouping them together. So now we're going to go back to our desktop design. And here real soon, once we have this one established over here, we'll create an overall component for the header navigation. Okay, so now we're going to have our login button over here. And what we'll do is we can reuse our component for the login button itself. So we can double click this, change this to login, and what we'll do is come back to design, and for design we're going to say this is going to be in the hover state by default because I want to differentiate it a little bit. And I also, if we take our type right here and change this to bold, that way we create visual hierarchy between the two. This navigation is going to be a little bit different than this navigation in terms of styling. And what we want to do is also make sure that that is center aligned as well. All right, and in a second we'll go ahead and get out of our 12 column grid so that we make sure everything's evened up. So now we have the login button, and then we're going to have a primary call to action that stands out a lot called Start Campaign. And this is going to be in button format, so we'll have a new component to work with. So let's go ahead and just get ourselves a button container here, and we will go ahead and we'll just grab one of these right here. We can paste that, and we'll just put this out here at the top alone. And I'm going to type in Start Campaign, and I will also detach that. So detach instance. All right, and it is currently grouped up, so ungroup, and we'll choose auto width. Okay, so for this button, we're going to use the fill of primary navigation. So right here, and then for the button fill, you want to make sure is white, and we'll also make sure this one is bold. Great. Okay, so now what we can do is get this evened up here, and we'll go ahead and give ourselves a little bit of rounded corners. We're going to say 4 is pretty good. We'll go ahead and select both of these, and we'll choose auto layout. And you'll make sure that when we choose this, we'll make sure it's centered here. And then we can go ahead and create a component. So now we'll go ahead and copy that, and we'll delete it and go to components. And we'll go ahead and put a button here. And then you know the drill by now, we will add variants to it. So we'll have a hover state to this version right here. Notice it says primary color. We're going to detach that, and now we're just going to make it slightly lighter when somebody hovers over it. So we push it up, and also slightly desaturate. Right around there looks good to me. So it's 273, 71, 61 for those values. And now we'll go ahead and add that. And by the way, there I go forgetting what the values are. Let's make this even of 60. All right, so this is going to be primary color 60. And under colors, let's replicate both of these. Let's not do that. Let's just push this up. All right, and this is going to be this one right here. There we go. So as you see, we're continually updating our design system. We can at the end we're going to add the topography section and a little bit based on our choices so far. So now let's go back to our desktop, or no, let's go back to our components rather, and now we have our new color here, and this is going to be hover. So again, we will select our bounding box. This is false. This is true. All right, and I think that's pretty good right there. All right, and we can just move things down. All right, that's looking pretty good. Now what we would also want to do is adjust these so that we also have a little label for each one. So this is going to be navigation, nav links, we could call it. Let's make this bold. All right, I'm not too happy with the styling, but we can always adjust this here in a bit. Okay, or moving forward. So now what we'll do is go to our, oh, I forgot one thing. We'll go back to our components in prototype. We will change this to while hovering, and we'll leave it at instant as well. So now we'll go back to our desktop design, assets. When you click on it, it changes your current page. So you just want to left click and drag. There we go. And start campaign. By the way, we want to make sure, switching to design, that this is all behaving as it should, and it is. So now Control-Shift-4, we're going to put this here, make sure everything is centered up and aligned exactly where it needs to be. So now one final thing is we can take these elements, let's go ahead and group these up. And now we can go ahead and create an actual component out of it. So we click here, create component. And so now that we have it grouped up and it's a component, make sure you double click in here, and it's probably going to set this to scale. Make sure it's set to right. And that way, when we go to create maybe a tablet version or another version, it's going to, oh, one thing you don't want that to happen, that was squishing. So we changed this here just to left and top. So now we can do that. Only to a point. Obviously this will start to break if we get that close in. So we may not have to scale this. We may just go straight to tablet where we have a little menu icon, but at least it gives us flexibility. So now we can copy that and delete it, and we'll go back to our layers, inner components, and let's make this a little bit larger. And here is a header component. So let's just make this a label of small components. We'll delete this over here. This will be primary. Let's just make that top navigation rather. All right. And that's pretty good for now. Happy with that. So one last time, we'll go back to design, assets, and I'm not seeing the other one. So let's go back to components. So this is called component 1. We want to make sure we change that to top navigation. Oh, and that wasn't working because if you click on it, it says component missing. So if we restore component, what we'll do is just drag this over here and delete that. There we go. So now we can come back. Let's do top navigation. Go to assets. Hopefully it is there now. There it is. So now we can go back to our desktop design, click on assets, and drag that in. Control-Shift-4. And there we go. Whew, I know, quite a bit of work, a lot of setup, but don't worry, things will keep going faster as we proceed forward.